There was a man in a maintenance uniform, carrying a bag of old tools. No one knew who he was. No one paid attention when he warned. Until the system almost exploded. The whole company was on the brink of collapse, and the only person who knew how to save it was once kicked out of the meeting room, who was listened to, who was looked down upon, and who really kept the heart of the company from collapsing inside the walls. A story not for those who only know how to look down. Monday morning, the central branch of our Victory Corporation was bustling as usual. The elevators were going up and down, office workers in neat suits, coffee in hand, walked through the lobby without looking around. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled blue maintenance shirt, carrying an old tool bag, passed them. No one asked who he was. No one noticed his quiet but experienced eyes. James Miller, the president of the entire corporation, was pretending to be a new maintenance worker. He went straight to the B2 floor engineering room, where the noisy machines drowned out all conversation. There, he smiled lightly at a young employee who had just entered and shook hands. "Hello, I'm Jim, the morning shift replacement." The employee nodded, awkwardly pointing to the roster. "You're assigned to check the ventilation fan system on each floor. There's a small report of a buzzing sound on the 5th floor." James nodded. No one realized that Jim had stood on a big stage announcing the global expansion strategy just a few weeks ago. Now, he was quietly walking into every corner of the building, a place that young managers never bothered to visit. The 5th floor smelled of fresh paint. The hallways were sparkling. The air conditioners were running smoothly. James took out his tools and climbed up to check the air conditioner vents. A small, very thin leak sounded. A sound that normal ears would ignore, but not James. He marked the suspicious spot with a red pen. He went down to the engineering area below to check the piping diagram. Something was wrong. A connection in the old drawing had been changed. James made a note, then quietly returned to the engineering room. A few other employees passed by him. A man sighed when he saw him wiping his sweat new brother. Remember not to mess things up and get scolded by the manager. James just smiled. He was used to people looking at clothes before looking at people. The 8th floor was a place few people visited. No conference rooms, no VIP rooms, just a technical warehouse, a few old data storage rooms, and a small space that used to be a project office. James stepped out of the elevator and looked down the empty hallway. The air was hot. He bent down to listen. The low hum, almost like the sound of wind whistling through plastic pipes, rang out again. He used his stethoscope to scan every inch of the wall. Then he stopped at a wall next to the auxiliary machine room. That spot was not on the main cooling pipe diagram. James took the technical drawing on the tablet in his pocket and checked it. There was a blind spot, a place where the new digital system did not match the data from 3 years ago, and he remembered it very well, because he had signed off on that renovation. He noted the location, went down to the 3rd floor to report it to the head of the technical team, a man named Liam. Liam was standing next to the coffee bar, listening to the phone, seeing James. He frowned. "Who are you? Which team do you work in?" "What are you doing here?" James politely said. "I just got here today. There are some unusual signals on the 8th floor. I want to check the pipes behind that wall." Liam waved his hand. "No need. The 8th floor is just a warehouse. There are no important systems. If there's a problem, the monitoring system will report it." He turned his back and continued to make the call. James was silent for a few seconds. Then he took out a copy of the diagram from his pocket and put it on the table. "I think you should review this. If I'm wrong..." "I apologize." Liam didn't even look at it. He just said, "Your job is to clean and check according to the schedule. Don't interfere with the engineer's business. It's a waste of time. James nodded, quietly put the paper back in his pocket, and walked away. As he disappeared down the hallway, a female employee standing nearby asked Liam quietly, "Who is he that looks so knowledgeable?" Liam shrugged. Probably a temporary contract worker. Never mind. In a corner of the 8th floor, the wind still whistled softly through the cracks in the walls. Something was waiting to explode, but no one was ready to listen. The important area of the branch, where the department heads, executives and senior experts work. The large conference room is being prepared for an internal presentation on the data center expansion project, a much-anticipated event with the participation of many directors from other regions. James enters from the back technical entrance. In his hand is a tool to check the power sockets and the temperature sensor. A female manager turns around to take a quick look and immediately orders, "Brother, clean the podium and check the microphone system. Don't let anything go wrong." James nods. Little does she know, the microphone she is ordering was installed in the year James personally signed the construction contracts. He kneels down, opens the small electrical box behind the wall, and that's when he sees it. A subwire, tangled, and not up to technical standards. There should have been an auxiliary radiator here, but someone had overlooked it to cut costs or speed up the process. A section of the wall behind the podium began to heat up more than usual. James paused. He placed his hand on the wooden surface, feeling the heat spread. The cooling system he suspected wasn't just on the 8th floor, it had spread to the main power center. Footsteps sounded behind him. Liam appeared with a group of young employees. He frowned when he saw James was still there. "What are you doing?" "Opening the electrical box without permission." James remained calm. "This power outlet has a heat dissipation problem. If we don't handle it in time, it will affect the entire 11th floor wiring." One employee sneered, "Do maintenance people know electricity, or do you think you're an expert after reading Google?" The group burst into laughter. James was silent. He pointed at the infrared heat sensor, which was flashing red numbers. "This is proof." Liam glanced at it, then still shook his head. There was no request to check this area. "When you're done, move out. Don't disturb the meeting." James put away the device. No protest, just a short, "I'll be back, and I hope it's not too late." As he walked out of the room, laughter rang out behind him. But a young employee, the only one who noticed James's expression, quietly watched. There was something in that gaze, not like a normal maintenance man out in the hallway. James walked slowly. His hand gently clenched the folded diagram in his pocket. A cold sweat began to bead on the back of his shirt. It wasn't from the pressure, but something in the wall was heating up faster than anyone thought. As night falls, the building is deserted. The sounds of typing on keyboards are sparse. A figure quietly pulls the technical door of the B2 floor and closes it behind him. James turns on his headlamp. In the narrow space between the concrete walls, he probes each pipe. The pale yellow light shines through the thick layers of dust on the old equipment. No one bothers anymore. No more sarcasm. Only the sound of his heart beating to the blinking rhythm of the heat sensor. He follows the pipe from the 8th floor down, the part he has been suspicious of all day. And finally, he stops in front of a joint located behind the technical wall, a thin crack so hard to see, you have to touch it with your fingertips to feel it. Tiny drops of water leak out. Not much, but continuously. James takes a towel to wipe it, places a test paper on the surface. Red dot, there is an electric leak. The crack not only leaked water, but also conducted electricity back into the wall. If it meant cold air from the central air conditioning system, the risk of a short circuit in the entire system was entirely possible. He crouched down and took out the old blueprint to compare. This location should have been covered with 2 layers of insulation, but it had been cut. Maybe it was the contractor. Maybe it was someone who signed off in a hurry. No one remembered, except James himself. He made a note in his notebook, taking off his gloves, pulling out his old phone, taking pictures of every corner. In the flickering light, his face became serious. Not angry, just blaming himself for once believing that everything could run smoothly with just procedures and lists. Now, he saw clearly. Every system is only as strong as its weakest point. And that weakness was silently flowing through this wall. James left the computer room at nearly midnight, quietly relocking the door, leaving no trace, as if he had never been there. Only one night shift worker saw the flashlight beam through the glass, but thought he was seeing things. On the way back, James stopped in the lobby of the building. Looking up, the lights on the 11th floor were still on. Someone was preparing for tomorrow's meeting. They didn't know. They were sitting on a thin blade. James touched his pocket. The drawings, the pictures, the notes were ready. He wouldn't let anyone be harmed, whether they believed him or not. The next morning, the atmosphere in the building was unusually bustling. The conference rooms were lit up early. The cafeteria was more crowded than usual. The announcement of the expansion model of the server system, the digital heart of the branch, would take place at 10 a.m. All departments were present. Liam wore a blue suit, neatly combed his hair, and held a presentation document in his hand. His face was confident, as if he was entering the biggest moment of his career. Meanwhile, James walked down the 5th floor hallway with a heavy step. In his hand he held a paper file. No logo, no fancy cover. Inside were evidence of cracks, missing insulation, and electrical diagrams. He stopped in front of the door of the technical director's office, knocked. No one answered. He knocked again. The door swung open. An assistant came out with a polite smile. "Sorry, you can't come in today. The boss is preparing to go on stage." James handed over the file. "I'm the one who discovered a major incident that could affect the system. I don't need to come in, but give this to the department head immediately." The assistant glanced down. Seeing a maintenance man in old clothes, his shoes lightly covered in mud, his eyes somewhat tense. He hesitated, then smiled awkwardly. "Okay, I'll transfer it after the ceremony." James didn't say anything more, just looked into his eyes, as if to send his final message, it won't wait until after the ceremony. Then he turned away, walking past the employees who were laughing, checking slides, testing the sound. No one looked at him for more than a second. No one asked, "What did you just say?" In a corner of the hall, James tried again. He knocked on the door of the auxiliary control room, where the technical team was on duty. A young engineer opened the door, squinting. "Who are you? Why are you here?" James tried to speak clearly and calmly. "I found that the pipes on the 8th floor may short-circuit if the cooling system is running at full capacity. We need to check it immediately." The engineer shrugged. "The system is fine. There are no warnings on the control panel." Then he turned back to the screen. "Thank you. If there is a fault, it will show up. Don't worry." James nodded. "Step back." The door closed. The sound of typing on the keyboard rang out again. Outside in the hallway, people were preparing to applaud, and he, a man who had stood on the biggest stage, was now not allowed to go through a small door. He went down to the technical floor, into the old computer room, turned on his own laptop, accessed the heat map, a map that no one remembered he had designed specifically for this system. On it, a patch of red was spreading, slowly, but steadily, and if it continued like this, around 11 to 10, the main system would begin to fail. James bit his lip, set the alarm, prepare the emergency kit, and sit down, back against the cold wall. Wait, not for the moment of collapse, but for the right moment to stop it, whether anyone believed him or not. 15 a.m. James was still sitting in the basement engineering room. In front of him was an electronic map, the light from the screen reflecting off his quiet eyes. With each passing minute, the red warning light expanded by another square. No one saw it. No one knew. He stood up and opened the safe in the corner of the room. Inside was an old thermal suit, a gas mask, and some emergency electrical insulation tools. All were still in the same place as when he was the chief engineer. No one in the company remembered that cabinet. No one but he knew the code to open it. James put on his protective gear, carefully checked the mask, the air filter. He took his tool bag and a roll of emergency power cord. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the silence, the absolute loneliness when you know what's going to happen and no one believes you. 10:05, on the 11th floor. The announcement ceremony began. The stage lights lit up. The branch manager stepped out to speak about the digital future and system innovation. Liam stood to one side, smiling slightly, holding a presentation file in his hand. No one noticed. The backup server screen began to flicker strangely. Downstairs, James walked to the main pressure control area. There were 2 engineers on duty. Now it was empty. He opened the control panel with the hand code. A beep sounded. The circuit board lit up. The numbers fluctuated beyond the allowable limit. He stepped back, took a deep breath, unplugged part of the subunit, temporarily reducing the load, then quickly connected the subcircuit to the 6th floor air conditioning, the only way to release the pressure without causing the main system to collapse. Sweat soaked his back. Even though the room was cold enough to numb his hands, he had no one to help him. No surveillance cameras, only the sound of wires, air valves, and his heart pounding like a drum. 10:35. James checked everything again, confirmed that the danger signal was steadily increasing. If his calculations were correct, at around 11:05, the main system would exceed the load limit and blow the fuse on the 11th floor. He took an old piece of paper from his pocket. It was a note he had made 3 years ago. Just a small gap, if not sealed, will become a crack that will destroy the entire system. James folded the paper, put it in his inner pocket, and started walking up the technical stairs. Every step was heavy, not because of the equipment, but because you're about to enter a battle where the opponent is not technical errors, but the arrogance of those who do not listen. 11 o'clock sharp. The 11th floor was brightly lit. The sound was turned up. The giant LED screen displayed the words, "Digital Heart, our new pride." The applause was thunderous. Liam stepped onto the stage, smiling confidently. He held a small remote control in his hand, preparing to show the internal cloud map. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will witness a milestone. Suddenly, the room swayed slightly. The screen flickered. The sound was distorted for a moment. A few people turned around. Liam frowned, reaching up to adjust the microphone. "Sorry about the slight problem. It must be the signal. We will boom." A dry explosion came from the wall behind the stage. White smoke billowed through the gap near the air conditioner. The ceiling light went out and then came back on immediately. The room was dead silent. Everyone stood up, bewildered. The technical manager rushed to the control panel behind him, his face pale. The server floor, there's an abnormal current. The pipeline pressure suddenly increased. An employee shouted, "There's a burning smell." Smoke from the west corridor. Liam backed away, his eyes panicked. "Cut the power. Turn off all backup systems." But the remote control didn't respond. An engineer trembled. "It's frozen. We can't control anything from here." In the midst of that panic, a voice rang out from the end of the corridor. "Don't touch the sub-panel. The fault lies in the 8th floor air conditioner, not here." Everyone turned around. A man in protective gear, his face covered in ash, stepped out from the technical entrance. He held a pressure gauge in his hand. It was James Miller. Liam was surprised. Why are you? James did not answer. He went straight to the central control panel, opened the protective cover, pressed the code that only the president knew. Beep, 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 crack. The system responded. The auxiliary warning light switched to safety mode. The dispatch current was diverted to the 6th floor subcluster. The pressure began to drop. The entire room was stunned. The man, who was considered a maintenance worker, he was now operating at a system level that even the branch manager had never touched. A tech guy stuttered. "He's super administrator level. It can only be. A manager whispered. James Miller. The air froze. Liam stood still. His eyes locked on James, the man he'd once scolded for meddling in engineering. James turned. Calm. His expression was not angry. He just looked silently at the room full of people, confused and embarrassed. Then he spoke, very quietly. "But clearly, you should have listened." James walked to the control panel, where the entire engineering team was struggling helplessly. No one dared to stop him. He opened the emergency power box, used his personal device to connect the switch circuit. The operation was decisive, precise. The main screen displayed again. The pressure readings dropped rapidly. The temperature in the server room returned to a safe level. The red warning gradually faded. A minute, then 2 minutes passed. Everything stabilized again. No one said anything. Only sighs of relief. A young employee quietly whispered, if he hadn't come in on time, the entire engineering area would have collapsed. Liam stood still. His expression was no longer arrogant. Only shock remained. The person he had laughed at was the person who had just saved the entire system, and perhaps the entire company. James took off his protective mask. Sweat ran down his forehead. He looked around the room. His eyes were not accusing, just quiet, as if to ask, "Now do you believe that a maintenance person can see what the system cannot see?" A young technician took out his phone and recorded the moment James worked to save the system. The video was only a few dozen seconds, unedited, without any effects. There was only the image of a man working quietly, while everyone was confused. In the video, he whispered, "Who is he?" Just 10 minutes later. The clip was sent to the internal group, then it spread to the IT department, then to the HR department, then to the board of directors. The employees huddled around the screen. One said, "I saw him on the 8th floor yesterday. I thought he was just a cleaning shift." Another, "Wait, that look. I saw it at the strategy meeting last year. Could it be?" The branch manager watched the video, his face pale. He looked at Liam, Are you sure you know who he is? Liam swallowed. Nothing to say. Just standing there. Frozen. And then a confirmation line appeared in the system access level. James M. Miller, Executive Chairman, Our Victory Group. The room was silent. No more keyboard sounds. No more whispers. Just shock. Spreading like ink stains in water. The man they had once ordered around, once laughed at, once pushed away, was the one who had quietly walked into the most dangerous place and walked out. No need for applause, no need for titles, just a silent question. Who in this company have you really listened to? The main control room. The door opened. James Miller walked in, still wearing his dusty maintenance suit, a black carbon stain on one sleeve. No one said a word. Everyone stood up, not out of politeness, but because there was no other choice. The branch manager stepped forward. His face was white. "Sir, President." His voice choked, not out of surprise, but out of shame. James did not sit. He just stood in front of everyone. His eyes scanned the room that had been filled with laughter. Applause, now as quiet as stone. "I didn't come here to test you," James began. "I came to listen." He held up a stack of documents. There were technical notes, pictures of cracks, circuit diagrams, and system warnings. All these, I put them in your hands 2 days ago. But no one read them. No one dared to object. No one dared to bow their heads. They just stood still. Liam slowly walked forward, holding the old file that he had once skimmed through. The first page still had the pencil writing, "The bug may not explode, but it will break silently." Liam paused. His eyes were red. He looked up at James. Was wrong. His voice trembled. "I looked at the wrong person. I didn't listen." James put his hand on his shoulder. No scolding, just a gentle sentence. No one is always right, but the one who knows how to admit his mistakes is the one who starts to be right again. At that moment, no one thought of him as a cleaner, but as the only one who had silently kept the company's heart from beating. And at that moment, the whole room burst into applause. Not on cue, not because he was the president, but because they saw a man who didn't need a title to act. The room was still buzzing with applause, but James raised his hand. He didn't like noise. He hadn't come here to be applauded. He pulled an old, wrinkled piece of paper from his pocket. On it was a handwritten sentence, "Only when you get really low can you see which walls are about to fall." He held up the paper. "This is something no engineering textbook teaches. Not in management manuals, not in hierarchy or KPIs." He paused. His eyes touched each face. Each gaze began to change. "I'm not better than you. I didn't come here to fix wires. I came here to see if the people I trusted still knew how to look down." James turned to Liam. "You have the knowledge, but you've forgotten the most important thing. Listening. Not listening to your superiors, but listening to reality." He pointed to the system screen that had just stabilized reality. "Never lies. It's just that people don't listen." A female employee raised her hand, as if to say something. James smiled. "Ask," she said, quietly but clearly. "Why did you do that? Pretending to be a maintenance man, putting yourself in danger." James looked out the glass door. The clouds outside were parting. A ray of sunlight shone through the haze, because if I don't do it, then no one will. He turned back, because I don't want to be the chairman who stands high and gives orders from afar. I want to be the one who, if possible, bends down to patch a crack before it breaks a trust. Silence. Not a single voice intervened. No one was higher than anyone else. There was only one lesson, not in the manual. It's in how a person chooses to step forward, when no one else will take the first step. A week later, the entire branch's engineering system was reviewed, not because of a directive from above, but because everyone wanted to start over. A new roster was posted in front of the engineering room. Every suggestion, no matter who it comes from, must be read, even the floor cleaner. Liam walked into the general meeting with a serious face. He held a piece of paper, not a report, but an apology. He read it slowly. Sentence by sentence, I didn't listen. I used to think my qualifications and position made me right, but a small crack and a maintenance person taught me the biggest lesson. The room was silent, not because he was the boss, but because, for the first time, they saw a real person. James wasn't in the chairman's chair that day. He stood silently at the back of the room, still the same light gray shirt, still the same slight smile, like the first time he entered the building. A young employee approached, handing him a small bag. "Sir, this is the maintenance suit you wore. We've washed it, but no one has dared to fold it yet." James took it. His eyes quiet, he looked at the faded shirt, with a bit of old oil on the shoulder. The thing that had let him through all the prejudices, the thing that had let him hear what the reports didn't say. He smiled, folded the shirt carefully, not to put away, but to keep, as a reminder. Then he turned and walked away. No noise, no jingle, no goodbye. He walked across the lobby, where people who had passed him by without even looking at him now bowed their heads in greeting. He stepped into the elevator, the doors closing behind him. On a nearby screen, the words appeared in the internal system. Not all simple people are small, and it is not the position that determines value.